Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's Best of British Business campaign. Well, earlier I had quite a lively discussion and learnt a lot from the panel of Diversifying.io. One person in particular that I found impressive was Cynthia Davis, so I invited her for an extra chat just to find out a little bit about her. Cynthia, let's find out a little more about you. Tell us about your background, where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm one of those people that's got a very mixed kind of upbringing. So my parents are from Zimbabwe and they moved to Yorkshire when I was quite young. So I grew up in Yorkshire. My early upbringing was very much, just being the only person of colour in my school. So yeah, very interesting.
And did you see yourself as a bit of a novelty, or were you welcomed? What was the reaction?
I think there was a lot of curiosity, and I think kids are always quite curious, and sometimes that can come out in a negative way. Sometimes it can be kind of just a way to try and find out. But I remember it was always, I always asked my mum, like, "Oh, is there anyone else that looks like me?" And it was really difficult. And I think people always remembered the fact that I was black versus my name. So whenever somebody said, "Oh, Cynthia's having a party. Who's Cynthia, the black girl?" "Oh yeah, the black girl." So that's how I actually became known. And for me, it was just, I didn't know any better, so that's what I just kind of grew up with, and it just almost became the norm to me. I didn't know anything else, so.
There weren't any periods where you'd go home and you'd be crying into your pillow or anything like that. It just, as a young person, I suppose it was just like water off a duck's back at that stage, was it?
Yeah, I think I was very lucky in the sense that my parents, prepared me that I'd have challenges. So they'd kind of talk to me about the fact that, you do stand out, you are different, so you're going to have to work twice as hard, you're going to have a thick skin, you can't cry every time somebody calls you names. And of course I had loads of racist names, loads of jokes being said about me, but it was, you learn to have a thick skin, I think, from a very young age. It's the whole kind of thing about sticks and stones. And I just think, because I think you when you don't have other people beside you that like you, it's very difficult. Other than my family, I probably didn't have many people, that I could look to or ask these kind of questions growing up, because there wasn't anyone else in school that looked like me. So can you remember at what age things became more apparent to you, and you thought, hang on a second, I've got to do something about this? Yeah, I think for me, it was the birth of my daughter. So that's when it really hit home, because I knew the challenges that my parents had, when they first came to country, and the challenges that I had as well were still there. They hadn't gone away, and this was also going to happen to my daughter. And I think there's something as a parent that you want to protect your kids, you want to shield them from some of the horrible things that are going to go on in the world. And for me, something had to change. This couldn't be something that continued to happen generation after generation after generation. So it really spurred me on to think, well, what can I do? How can I, make the change or the difference in the world for not only for my daughter, but for others that look like my daughter.
So what did you decide to do, and at what age was this?
For a very long time, I just didn't know what to do or how I could do that. And I think the time that I had my daughter, I was actually in my mid-30s, and the moment dawned on me that there were loads of people that were like me, that had challenges and barriers when it came to, employment and opportunities, that it wasn't a level playing field. And I think that's when I thought, well, knowing what I did, had career in recruitment for quite a long time. I knew how to connect and engage with people from all walks of life. I knew that there was fantastic talent out there, but just the fact that it wasn't equal access to opportunities, and I wanted to bridge that, and knew there was a better way to give people access to those opportunities, but not just access, but equity in that process was also really important to me. So yeah, that's why I decided to do something about it and started my own business. And I'd never run a business in my life. I didn't know how to do it. I actually had to Google how to run a business. So it was, something in me just needed to do this.
You were already successful in what you were doing. You'd used your experience as a youngster up in the north of England, which had given you thick skin, as you said, and that's what probably prompted you to rise through the ranks. So you're already successful, but you decided to do something about it because you weren't happy for other people and you wanted to give them a lift up on the rung of the ladder. But that's a hell of a risk, isn't it? Why give up the huge success you were enjoying to start your new business, your new venture?
Because if you want to see change, then you have to be part of that change. You know, I couldn't sit back and expect my daughter to benefit from a world or for people to go fix that world if I wasn't prepared to do that. So, you know, there was part of me that thought, right, if I want the world to be better, I have to be part of that solution. I have to find a way. So in 20, 30 years, when my daughter eventually goes into the world to find a job, she's not judged because of her gender or her ethnicity. She's not paid less than her male counterparts. She's not judged because of the colour of her skin or who she loves, you know, whatever her sexual preference will be later on in life. You know, she just needs to be who she is and just be given a job because she's brilliant and she's amazing at what she does. So that's what drove me, and I was prepared to take that risk because sometimes we have to do that to see change.
Anyone starting a new business knows how very difficult it is. It's like a newborn baby. You love it, you hate it, it's annoying. What is the main thing that drove you on? Were there points where you thought, no, this is too much for me to take on board myself? Just take us through that journey and what was going through your mind, the good and the bad.
Yeah, I mean, in business, anyone starting, it's not an easy thing to be an entrepreneur, and I think there's so many more bad things than good things that come along the way. And I think when you are faced with having to make all the decisions yourselves, it's very difficult because when you're working for a business, you've got a marketing department you can go to, you've got a finance department you can go to, you've got a legal department to go to. When you run your own business, you are every single department. You need to know everything. And I think that's sometimes the biggest challenge. One of the things that I found was networking. I sought out other women that looked like me. Growing up, I never had access to those women, and I think there was also lack of confidence in me to go and seek those women and ask them for kind of help or advice, or, you know, and I found when I approached them, you know, I just looked up on LinkedIn and thought, right, who's doing great things? Who can I reach out for advice? And they were really open and extended a hand and, you know, answered my questions and gave me support. And to this day, those women are now part of my, you know, kind of go-to circle, and they've been my backbone. So it's finding people that when you're at your lowest or you're having a really bad day, you've got somebody at the other end of the, you know, the phone that you can pick up to and just say, oh, you know, this is what I'm experiencing. What would you do? How did you navigate it? And have another sounding board. So that kind of network allowed me to have another support when I didn't have a team. You know, I'm lucky enough now that the business has grown, and, you know, we've got a fantastic team. We've got a fantastic leadership team that support and bring loads of different skills. So now I've got experts that I can go to within the business that can advise on that. But when you're starting off, you don't have that. So
there must have been huge barriers in the way. Can you remember what the most fierce barrier that you had to break down was, that sticks in your mind to this day?
I think imposter syndrome is something that I suffer from, and I think it's something that to this day I still try and, you know, when you walk into a room and, you know, the parts of me where I'm sitting around and there's loads of CEOs of these big kind of brands, I'm thinking, God, should I be here? You know, and I have to remind myself I'm here because I'm adding something to the table. So it's that belief in my capabilities and my skills. But sometimes when you are in those rooms, you're not always given the opportunity to speak. So I've had to learn to have a voice. I've had to learn to stand up and make sure that when I have that seat around the table, I make good use of it and speak up for those that might not have had the opportunity to be in those rooms. So that's something that I'm still trying to get my head around and still trying to push against, because just because you've made it into the room doesn't mean that you're always given access and a voice as well. So,
what sort of advice would you give to somebody that's on a similar journey to you at such a young age and, well, I don't know, whether going to school or entering the workplace from university or college for the first time? What advice would you give to people with a similar background to yours?
Believe in yourself. I think for me, and stand up for yourself. I think I wish I'd had the same confidence that I have now back then, but confidence in my ability and the fact of what I'm capable of. And I think sometimes when the world knocks you down, you start to believe it, and therefore you doubt yourself. So always be your biggest champion. You know, no matter what anyone says, you know, believe in yourself, believe in your capabilities and what you're able to do, and prove the doubters wrong. And I think for me, that's what's driven me, is to try and prove people wrong, to say, I can do this, I'll show you. So always have that confidence, always have that belief, and just go for it. You know, without taking that risk, without taking that leap of faith, you will never succeed anything. And I look at some of the great people who have, you know, gone before me. You know, they all took a risk. They all took that leap of faith, not knowing what the outcome was going to be, but it was that confidence to say, we're going to do it and give it a go. Just give it a go. You've got nothing to lose.
And this has led to you starting up diversifying.io. Where do you see that going?
Tech is a great enabler for a lot of organisations. Also, it's an enabler for change. And if you want to go faster and you want to go and achieve, you know, more global kind of changes, you know, you do need to have a vehicle that will allow you to do that. And that's what tech allows us to do. And this is where, with diversifying, it's allowed us to go that step further. What we do with diversifying, it will affect anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your ability, you know, this will impact everybody's lives in a sense that, you know, if you are in a job or a career that allows you to be your true authentic self, where you're not judged because of who you are, what you bring, what you stand for, what you represent, and you can really succeed and flourish, what an amazing world that would be, you know. And we're part of that, you know, in some small way. We're enabling people to find those opportunities, to find organizations that will allow them to succeed and to thrive. So for us, if we can get more people to have access to those opportunities, then we've achieved great success. And to me, that's what we're striving for.
It sounds like a 24/7 job, but what do you do when you're not working? What do you do to relax? Any hobbies, pastimes? What is it you do?
I have another job. It's called being a mother. That one I never get a day off from. So, do you know what? I'm one of those people that I've had to learn to I can't do everything, so I've had to try and find ways to switch off. And I think the simplest thing of just spending time with my friends and my family is a great way to relax. I find reading, you know, is great, but also sometimes just switching on Netflix and chilling, as they say. Yeah.
Cynthia, it's been great to get to know you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Brilliant.